Pastor Anthony Lewis of Ray of Light Advent Ministries, Orlando.
And there's another mic there.
Yes.
Testing, test. Oh, that's perfect.
Testing one.
Testing. Now we're in business.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. Pastor Anthony Lewis of Ray of Light Advent Ministry, Orlando. Prior to Ray of Light Advent Ministry, Orlando, where were you at? Where were you pastoring at before this assignment?
I was pastoring at Solomon's Porch Advent Ministry here in Orlando.
Okay, so Solomon's Porch Advent Ministry. Let's talk about how Solomon's Porch is different financially, structure-wise, what it's connected to and what Ray of Light is not connected to. Can you talk about the security aspect of that position at Solomon's Porch from a pastoral standpoint?
Okay, I was the senior pastor at Solomon's Porch Advent Ministry, and I became the pastor there because while I was pastoring in Africa, I am from South Florida, I'm American, but I was pastoring in Africa. And every year, at the end of the year, from Thanksgiving to around the second week of the first of the year, I would come home for vacation.
Okay.
Well, Solomon's Porch was one of the churches that I would preach at during that 6-week vacation. And that's how I became familiar with them. So when they needed a pastor, they asked me if I would consider coming from South Africa to be their pastor. The first time they asked me, I was not finished with my responsibilities on that side. So I said no. But the second time they asked me, I did consent, and I eventually became their pastor here in Orlando. Now, they are an independent ministry, and what that means is they're not attached to any large organization as it relates to their decision-making, their finances. They are autonomous.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So that, and I was their senior pastor.
All right. First, let me ask you, if you don't mind me asking, what is your age? How old are you, Pastor?
63 3/4. I'll be 64 next month, August.
Okay. So you already said they were an independent ministry, but can we just get into the financial part of that independent ministry, and we're going to contrast it from the financial standpoint of Ray of Light. So was it a secure financial position? You say they're independent, they're not connected to any, but was it a substantial offer that was made financially that took care of you and your family?
I do understand your question. They took care of me very well. Yeah, very well.
Okay.
Way on the other side of 50,000.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
yes.
That helps.
Yes.
I'm trying to protect them.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
but it was way on the other side of 50,000.
Okay.
So that was no issue. They were established. They had a couple of hundred members. Maybe on the rep books, maybe 250 or 300.
All right.
But they had a substantial membership, and there were no issues there. They really took care of my wife and I as a pastor. So we were secure.
And how long were you there?
5.5 years.
Okay. So now let's talk about how you transition, or what was the catalyst in you deciding to go from that secure position to the Ray of Light independent ministry that doesn't have all of those bells and whistles?
It not only does it not have all of those bells and whistles, it has very few bells and maybe no whistles.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Great question, though. The term Ray of Light was a name given to me when I was pastoring in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
I spent 5.5 years in Zimbabwe pastoring, and that's a phenomenal story as to how I got there.
Yeah, we're going to touch it. Yeah, we'll get there.
And then after Zimbabwe, I went down to South Africa. And while there is where I got the call from Solomon's Ports to come and pastor them, as I said before. So they were very secure and established. But there was something missing in terms of a spiritual itch that wasn't scratched.
Okay.
And I felt that before I got too much older, I'd rather die trying. It had to do with ministry. I'd rather die trying than to ride off into the sunset, as you see in the Western movies, when the horse rises up and the cowboy waves it. I didn't want that. Before that, I wanted to make sure that I tried to implement me to do, and it was different from what the vision of that church was, and pretty much different from the vision of most churches, to be honest with you. And so I'd rather go and start a ministry in Paramore, which has a reputation. Okay, can any good thing come out of Paramore? It has a reputation. So I wanted to make sure, in answer to your question, that I made an effort to do what God had called me to do. So I was willing to relinquish all of those amenities. I was willing to do that. And so I had no salary when I came here. I made sure that we didn't take any members with us from the other church, because that's not the reason why I came. Whatever we built there and developed, y'all stay there and I'll go over, because I believe the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few.
Absolutely.
And I believe that we're not all, there's no shortage of folk who need to come into the kingdom. And so we don't have to pull from one fishing pond to another fishing pond, from another church to another church, just to build a church.
Yes. So we're going to talk about Paramore, but let's talk about that transition before we get there, because I believe there's a story there. So first of all, how long, once you decided that the call was to go to Paramore, how long did it take you to wind down your responsibility and then get to Paramore? How much time are we talking?
Talking about 6 months.
Okay.
Because it took me, I don't know how many months I was thinking about it, but on one of my trips to Africa, which time does not allow me to get into, it really dawned on me that I can't go back to where I came and be happy. It just dawned on me on one of those trips, because even though I left Africa and I was pastoring at Solomon's Port, I still went back to Africa every year for evangelism, food ministry, orphanage ministries, you name it. We did that, supporting where I came from. I spent almost 8 years there. So I had a heart there, and I knew the need and how easy it was for us to fulfill those needs. Are you with me? What may be a little to us is a lot to them.
There.
And so that's what I was doing. And on one of those trips, man, I just said, nah, I'm done. I'm done with the regularly established church. I'm done with that. I put that. And when I came back, I spoke to my elder and said, hey, here's my resignation. And so after about 4 months after that, 4 months, I was here in Paramore with me and my wife and maybe a couple of other people.
And so let's talk about, you left all of the members that were established there. So how did the process go for you when you put the story out? What was the response that you were being called to meet some needs in Paramore? And can you just talk about how your elders came, your key individuals that are around you? Can you talk about what that process was, what that recruitment process was and that transition was?
Well, let me just say about the members. The members and I and my wife had a great relationship. Phenomenal relationship.
Mhm.
they could not understand why I would leave.
Right.
We would leave. They
Right.
just did not. So in leadership, sometimes it's best to not tell the whole story.
Mhm.
Jesus didn't tell the whole story always.
Absolutely.
He told his disciples
Parables.
there's some things I'd like to tell you,
Mhm.
but you cannot bear them now.
Mhm.
Are you with me?
Mhm.
But you'll find out hereafter. And that's how I took it. I
Mhm.
just said it's best to kind of keep it here,
Mhm.
and just indicate that God had called me to a different ministry, which He
Mhm.
had, always true.
Mhm.
But sometimes you feel like you have a straitjacket on.
Yeah.
And you got to determine, man, whether you want to be free and liberated, or whether or not you're going to try to be mashed into somebody else's vision.
Mhm.
And that's what I felt like I was
Got it.
being mashed and pressed into someone else's vision.
Got
And
it.
it was clearly different from mine and my personal experience, which you know about.
Right.
It was different from that.
Right.
And so I just said, look, before I leave this earth,
Mhm.
I'm coming over. And the Lord showed me Paramore, told me to come to Paramore.
Mhm.
You understand? I didn't pick and choose where I wanted to go.
Right.
And it's pretty much one of the two places in Orlando who has the worst reputation
Mhm.
in the city.
Okay. Got it.
So, but my members
Mhm.
were very, they didn't understand.
Mhm.
Why are you leaving?
Mhm.
But that's just like John the Baptist.
Yes.
I mean, hey man, you preaching and you got a large crowd, you got followers, and why are you leaving? Where you going?
Mhm.
I must decrease, so he must increase. It's just his time.
Yes.
And he left at the top of his game. Well, he got his head cut off, but he left at the top of his game. And so there was no, there was nothing other than
Got
it's
it.
time to go.
But now you have a phenomenal team of members around you as well.
Yes.
Can you talk about how, and even I have a story to tell in where I was and what attracted me here. Can you talk about how some of the key individuals who have supported you in this time at Ray of Lights, how they came to you, how you guys hooked up, where you met them? What can you enlighten us about that?
I certainly can.
Okay.
Now let's pause for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what this is. Is that affecting us? Because there's no way I can hear whether or not it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
sure.
You're right. You're right.
If you can, I know it's
Yeah.
better off, but
Yeah. Okay.
you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It's okay, but I got your question.
So yeah, just pick up from the question. I'll deal with that in the mix.
Okay. So, repeat the question again.
Okay. So you left one team to increase.
Yep.
But then you had to put a new team together to sow the seed in Ray of Light. So can you talk about, because you have a phenomenal team,
Yes.
once again,
Yes.
can you talk about how a couple of the key pieces in you came together and when they said, you know what, Pastor, I'm all in, and what it took to put that team together?
Okay. Let me start by saying this. A lot of people spend a lot of time asking God what their calling is or what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a different philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you ought to do what you go through.
Mm.
You ought to do what you have been through.
I agree.
I don't think that you need to consult God too long
Mm-hmm.
on what you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been to prison a long time,
Mm-hmm.
there is something you ought to be doing in some capacity
Mm-hmm.
to relate to those whom you've left behind.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been a drug addict
Mm-hmm.
for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
or drug addict, period,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic, there is something that you need to do. I'm not sure what level,
Mm-hmm.
to what extent.
Mm-hmm.
So you do what you go through.
Right.
If you've been through an abusive relationship,
Yeah.
if it doesn't matter, I believe that that's what you ought to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are at this church
Mm-hmm.
are people who have been through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one may say, well, who hasn't been through stuff? But they are willing to put their stuff out there and testify of
Mhm.
what God has done and how God has brought them through.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're willing to roll up their sleeves
Mhm.
and come out here and minister to the same people who were once doing what they did. In fact, most of our members here know the very same people that we feed, that we minister to, that come through our doors. Hey man, what's happening here? Yeah, man, what? That's you, man.
Mhm.
You know, and they know each other on a first name basis.
Gotcha.
They're just, they just been redeemed,
Mhm.
and one needs to accept Christ so that they can be liberated. So that's the congregation we have.
Mhm.
And my connection with them is that God connected me with them along the way.
Mhm.
Just somewhere we started talking, somewhere we went out to lunch, somewhere we connected on some level, and oftentimes it's connecting on that level.
Mhm.
Pastor, I didn't know you had gone through that.
Mhm.
And they feel a sense of understanding and connectiveness.
Got it. Got it. So, for those who may not know, let's talk about Paramore.
Mhm.
Can you describe the need in Paramore? Can you describe what that reputation that Paramore has? And can you describe how that made you know I need to be there to meet that need?
Well, ironically, the organization that I used to be a part of in terms of pastoring, I am still a part of theologically,
Mhm.
believe what they believe, but in terms of the organizational structure, they used to own this church.
Yeah.
That they ultimately sold to a Baptist church.
Mhm.
And the ones who owned this church went out to a much nicer area, to say the least, to build a wonderful congregation, a beautiful building, a
Absolutely.
wonderful church school, and all of that. But they left a void here in terms of what they've been called to do. And
Yeah.
they admit this now, that we just left. And so we really are a boomerang.
Mhm.
We're coming back, to address the
Right.
same folk that they left.
Mhm.
But Paramore has a reputation.
Mhm.
Shooting, you could go out on any given day and think that someone on the sidewalk has died,
Mhm.
and actually they have overdosed, or you got to call the ambulance for them. Or, there's a lot of mentally challenged individuals
Mhm.
that are in this area, a lot of homeless in this area.
Mhm.
I could take a rock and literally throw and hit the bridge, actually an overpass, where it used to be nothing but homeless people
Mhm.
who were once lawyers, who were once restaurant operators and owners, you name it, but they're homeless for whatever reason, drugs, mental challenges, mental illness, and that is right on the corner.
Mhm.
I could go outside and yell, and they would hear me.
Mhm.
Hey, we're feeding over here.
Mhm.
That's how close we are to them.
Mhm.
Well, that's all around Paramore.
Mhm.
It's not all that Paramore is. I want you to know that. They have
Yes.
some wonderful spots, wonderful people, wonderful organizations, but that's the reputation that Paramore has. Just
Mhm.
like, Trenton, New Jersey, West
Yes.
Side of Chicago,
Yes. Yeah.
Harlem used to have, and we're here to bring a spiritual renaissance.
All right. All right. So you did a phenomenal evangelistic series.
Mm.
And you went right at the heart of all of those things that you listed. So kind of grade yourself and look back and kind of tell the story of that evangelistic series and how you think it went and what you think was successful and why it was so impactful.
Okay. If there was a grading system,
Mhm.
if I may, you hate to grade something because you don't know, until eternity,
Mhm.
the impact that you really had.
Mhm.
We would have an A- in terms of the meeting,
Absolutely.
and probably a C+ or C with the aftercare.
Mhm.
Just being honest, because
Mhm.
you got to invest in people
Yeah.
once they have heard the gospel and been
Right.
baptized.
Right.
Are you with me?
Right.
So, but the point is that we literally went out and got people out of the alley,
Mm.
people who were homeless,
Yes.
people who had issues,
Mhm.
and they came to the meeting and they were baptized.
Mhm.
And those individuals, we took them to rehab.
Mhm.
Those individuals, we took them to a veterans place where they could get housing. Those individuals, we took them to the hospital so that they can get a surgery on a hernia that the doctor said if you would have rubbed up against too hard and it split, it would have burst and poisoned you. Those are the kinds of persons who came into, some of them, who came into the meeting and got baptized. And they now run our sound system. They now do the feeding on, on Saturday morning. Those are the kinds of individuals who make up our congregation. Almost everyone who's a member of my church has that kind of story and has that kind of backstory, backdrop to their story. And what made it so powerful is that we were just willing to step out and do it.
Yeah.
We were willing to feed. We were willing to go in people's homes. We were willing to put aside the reputation that the folks had and just rolled up our sleeves, as I always say, put our work boots on, and we just went after it.
You had a phenomenal Bible worker that we could not tell this story without touching on
Jacqueline
what
Ross.
Sister Ross did.
Jacqueline Ross.
Can you please touch on the impact that Sister Ross had in this community during that evangelistic series?
Sister Ross, she loved those people into the baptismal pool. She did not indoctrinate them into the baptismal pool. She loved them into the baptismal pool. She took interest in their children, the people's children. She took interest in what was going on in their home. She did all that Jesus would have done if he were here. Honestly, I mean, this woman was phenomenal. This woman, even with her sore feet and, because she's,
was working another job. So she was coming from another phenomenon.
And other programs. Oh my God. So shout out to her, kudos to her.
Absolutely.
And I learned a lot from her.
I did too.
And I've been in the ministry for years.
I did too.
But I learned
tons.
This woman was able to walk the hood.
Yeah. And everybody stopped and listened and prayed.
Yes.
Everybody was engaged. I never saw her walk up on a group that she didn't have complete command.
That's right. Of the situation.
Of
under
the
the power
situation.
of the Holy Ghost.
Have mercy.
Yes, sir.
Have mercy.
Yes, sir. So yeah, but she plays a part. We would be remiss if we did not.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about this phenomenal project that you have going on, the transitional housing. But first we have to touch on your story before we go forward into that.
Okay.
So you spoke about several of your members have been incarcerated. Several of them have had to rebuild their families and their lives after doing long stints. And you also can identify with that. Can you please tell your story, your testimony on what you went through and how you identify with that situation being incarcerated?
Okay, not a problem. My testimony is always therapeutic for me. I get a chance to not only tell where I went wrong, but I also have a chance to tell what God did right in my life. I can identify with them, and I'll give you a story that will bring it to point. One of our members, I was at their church. He was at another church at that time. And I was looking at a flyer on the wall, and it had to do with a prison ministry and a prison reunion, restoration reunion in Tampa, Florida. But I said to myself, man, I want to go to that. I'm going to go to that. But this gentleman came up and corrected me on something I didn't see on the flyer. And that is, it had already passed about a week or two ago. I didn't even see the date. And he said, what you know about that? You know what I'm saying? And I said, man, you better ask somebody. It's one of those kind of things. And as we began to talk, that's how we became close. And that's how he eventually joined our ministry because I said, no, man, I've been incarcerated myself. I said, no, I'm not talking about before I was a pastor. I had become a pastor and a very successful one, well recognized one. And I ended up going to prison. And of course, that started the conversation and opened the door because I did not look what I had gone through.
Right.
I did not look like what I had gone through.
Right.
All right, yeah. you know, you look you up and down, and you never know where a person came from. And we started to share, and that was the story. That probably would be best on a whole nother thing, but I can just tell you real quick because I have no shame in that game, and that is that I went out and ironically and to my bewilderment and others, I ended up robbing a bank. And I ended up getting a 12-year sentence for it. And I ended up doing 10 years on that sentence. Now, there's a lot of story in the middle of that story.
Right. And we're going to get to it.
Okay. But that's what ended up happening. And of course, I had to restore my family, regain confidence in people, as trust in me. But the bottom line is, in my opinion, is the anointing of God was still on my life, and it was obvious. And a lot of times we don't realize and recognize that just because someone falls, it doesn't mean that the Spirit of the Lord has left them. Are you with me? Moses, it was 40 years in the desert. Are you with me? Before the Lord tapped him. After 40 years in Egypt and 40 years in the desert, and God touched him and said, "It's time to get up now. Get up out of here." You know what I'm saying? You can't stay on the backside of the mountain. So God stayed with me, and I even taught and preached in prison. I gave Bible study in prison. There are people who came out of prison who to this day are either in the ministry, they either have their own Bible study, they are deacons in churches, and all of that, to God be the glory, because of those Bible studies that we had over the years in prison. And some of them are still Facebooking and calling me and looking me up. I meet them at the airport, and I hear names called, "Hey, Lewis," and you look around, man, in the airport, and you say, "Man, I know you from somewhere." God help me true. I was in New York once, on Times Square, and a brother was walking towards me, and I'm walking towards him, and our eyes locked, because we did time together. And in New York, and I was in Detroit, and he's in New York, and I said, "Man, I know you." In New York, folk don't they don't mess around, bro. They cold and go about their business. And he said, "Man, yeah, I know you too." And we had a long conversation right there on Times Square. And that's how God works. But, I'm getting excited now. But the point is, man, is that I got out of prison after 10 years, and God began to put my life back together again. He began to slowly snap the pieces of that puzzle that had been broken back together little by little.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about your vision for addressing that need of people whose families have been broken, and this Ray of Light Resource and Development Center that you are committed to building, putting here in this community. Can you talk about the vision of why you said you were going to put a resource and development center in the lives of individuals who want to put their families back together from coming out of that situation?
Okay, and again, you do what you go through.
Right.
And I know what it's like to try to get back on your feet when you come out of prison. I had 2 degrees in theology and in psychology. Are you with me? A dual degree. And it was hard for me. I had a Christian family who went to church school. All of their church school, all of their graduate experience. I had a wife who taught in the church school system. And even with all of that and the resources that we had to work with, it was still a challenge for me to get back on my feet, for me to restore my family, for me to restore my marriage. And we had the tools to do it, or at least that our exposure. There are a lot of people who have nowhere near what I had to get back on their feet. So I know what they need, and I know how prison and being incarcerated, how it can affect your family. I know the impact that it has, you understand? And so who best qualified, along with others who can identify with that, is capable and to help people get back on their feet. So when we came to Paramore, real quick, there's a building next door that I didn't go looking for. It's just it right next door.
Mhm.
You can literally put your hand on this building that we're renting and stretch it out both hands and then touch the building that we have purchased.
Mhm.
And we walk this block off and ask God to give us this block.
Mhm.
Now, the few members that we had here pre-COVID, we walked this block off and we stood in the front of this building and we literally laid hands on it and we prayed and said, Lord, give us this building. We want to put a cafe downstairs and call it Ray of Light Cafe,
Mhm.
where it can be a staple in this community, a place of positivity, a city of refuge for people. They can come and learn about biblical economics. They can learn about restoration. They can learn about liberation and freedom, how to overcome, all kinds of things that have impacted them negatively in their life. We just wanted to be that. And then, of course, they could be work there as well. We can do community activities. And here's the ironic thing. It used to be a restaurant, but it has been empty for about 15 or 16 years. It was a restaurant. Well, we want to put a restaurant there as well, but a community cafe where, folk can come in, we can feed the homeless out of it. And then, of course, in the back, we will build a place for showers where people, the homeless, can come 2 or 3 times a week and take showers. And then a computer in the back where they can look up jobs and answer emails and do some things. So we have plans, and then we can put a bakery in the cafe, and folk can learn how to do culinary things. That's the downstairs.
Mhm.
That's the downstairs. I know how challenging it is when you come out of prison to not have a place to stay.
Right.
And so upstairs used to be, back in the day, I'm not from Orlando, so I didn't know all of this until I was told. Back in the day upstairs, it used to be a rooming house.
Okay.
Are you with me?
Yes.
So it has about 6 rooms upstairs that we're going to gut out and renovate. And then women who are coming out of prison, we can have them transition to our housing upstairs and work in the restaurant, and that's the connection between the two until we help them get on their feet on a permanent basis.
In the building project, are you adding to that structure at all?
Yes, we're going to extend it from its current position
Mhm.
and come out, so many feet and go up maybe 2 or 3 stories as well in the back.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
And that's going to be, so we're going to extend it because we do want to put some washers and dryers so that the homeless can wash their clothes. And of course, as I said, some showers so that they can shower. Hygiene is one of the major issues
Yes.
with the homeless.
Yes.
People don't realize, man, and especially when you're talking about women, you're talking about 4, 5, 6, 10, 2 weeks without a shower
Mhm.
and then not able to wash your clothes, but once every so often. So we want to provide that.
Mhm.
Now, in the back of that,
Mhm.
which is, I think, what you might be alluding to, we want to buy some lots that are available in the back. Holy Ghost, Lord Jesus, give them to us.
Amen.
And then we want to put a full-fledged, Ray of Light apartments there, 3 stories high, much, much bigger than where we are now, what we plan on doing, so that, again, we can have studio apartments
Mhm.
where women coming out of prison can reunite with their children, reunite with their families who've been away for 4, 5, 10 years, 15 years. Yeah, that's what we have plans for.
So, is this a common thing that's happening in this community, or is this a unique thing that's happening in this community? Are there major changes that are happening to the population that you're dealing with? Can you talk about some of those things? Like, are you guys unique in what you're doing? Are there other people doing this, or have you set yourself apart, and are you in a specific lane? And what are some of the things that are happening in this community?
Okay, I'll try to make my answers shorter because
No.
there's a lot of going on.
Yeah.
But this is a transitioning community.
Okay.
It is being regentrified.
Okay.
We are only blocks from downtown.
Mhm.
We are only a couple of blocks from where the Orlando Magic play.
Mhm.
There's a huge soccer field, beautiful stadium that is, 5, 7 years old. That's down the way. They're reconstructing the freeway that is right next to us, and they're going to put a ramp here so that folk can come off and go to the games and go to the basketball game, watch the Magic play, and so on and so forth. So we're in a perfect location Are you with me? Now they've run away all of the people from under the bridge that used to be the homeless there.
Yeah.
So now they're scattered out. But unique in the sense that there are a lot of homeless that come to Florida. There are a lot of homeless that come to Orlando. A lot of homeless people. And there are a lot of homeless coalitions in this area. But they stay overnight, the people do, and then they leave and they go. Well, we want to invest in whomever God sends our way. And we want to be a resource for them and help them to help to develop their restoration process and reconnection to the community. And you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So we're not. We are unique in terms of what we are trying to do.
And your building project, I'm hearing that you have a unique application on how to address the cost cutting aspect of building. What's the term that we've been using, the catchphrase, what's it called? Affordable housing.
Yes, affordable housing.
So there's a component of your building project that allows you to address the issues of affordable housing in a time where prices are going through the roof. Can you talk to what makes you unique in that niche for affordable housing?
I certainly can, and I'll make this. This is a two-part answer.
Okay. Yes.
Number one, there is a product that the Lord allowed me to be a part of in Zimbabwe, where one of my young elders, who actually was a problematic elder, he was barely an elder, put it that way, but God eventually got a hold of him and turned his life around, and he became a phenomenal young man. God gave him a mobile phone company. And he calls it GTEL. The G stands for God Telecommunications, actually. GTEL. And I was a part of his organization all the way through, from inception to where it is now. And it's a multi-million-dollar business, whereas it was zero when I was there in Zimbabwe. So I've prayed him through challenges. I know the business. And a long story short, I believe ultimately that the Lord gave him that so that we can take the model and use it on this side and throughout the Caribbean islands, South America, Brazil, and do the same thing that he has done and grow that business, from zero to probably 4 or 5 times as successful, more successful than he has been.
Absolutely.
I'm confident that that's why the Lord allowed him and I to have such a wonderful relationship. And I be a part of the development of that business. That's number one. So please pray for us with that project, because we just believe that God is going to fund our project to where we don't have to beg anybody for anything. Are you feeling what I'm saying? He who holds the strings also has the chains. And if they have the strings to your finances, they can always control you. And we don't want to do that. We want God's vision to be free. Secondly, there is a project where Brother Joshua and I met, and he has a phenomenal concept about interlocking bricks that does not need skilled labor, that does not need cement. You literally, almost like Lego, click the brick together, the same kind of brick that we use and see people putting mortar on and building buildings. The only difference is that it does not need mortar and it doesn't need skilled labor. Why? Because like children, you lay the bricks, click, 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 and it's strong, and it meets and exceeds any hurricane wind test. It has even a greater strength and tensile strength than regular bricks. But the point is that God connected us, and we're literally going to use his project to have people coming out of prison who don't have skills, masonry skills. They don't have carpentry skills. They don't have any of that. Can literally come out of prison and get a job helping to lay brick on the lots that we believe God is going to give us, so that the folk coming out of prison and homeless folk can literally build their own houses with that interlocking brick. Now, yes, you need a supervisor with a project who does know about building and construction. However, the laborers do not have to know that. And God has put us together, and I'm so excited about what's going to happen, in that regard.
Yes. Is there anything in the story regarding the church ministry, the Ray of Light Research and Development, that you would like to share that we may have left out?
There is much to share. I believe that folk don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm.
And we don't have a ministry where we're going to have a lot of members by virtue of where we are. Folk just don't like coming to this area. They avoided coming home from work. But we believe that if you show yourself friendly, and by this shall all men know that you're my disciples, that you have love one for another. Didn't even say love for the world. Love one for another. And they desire to be a part of that and a place of belonging. We just believe that God is going to allow us to touch the lives of many. We believe that the same need that's in Paramore is a need that is very common in even poor countries. We're so blessed here in America that we don't even think about that. But the poverty level is unbelievable in other countries. $100 a month, $200, $300 a month is the maximum salary that they have if they have a job. And we want to be able, through particularly the phones that I told you about, as well as the brick that does not require, the skilled labor, and be able, man, for folk to build their own housing outside of where we are here in America and here in this community, as well as building character and replicating what we're doing here. So we're not churchy, we're not a conventional church, and not everybody wants to be a part of that. But here's how folk can be a part. If you believe in what we're doing, if you believe in and feel what we're saying. I used to say when I preached all the time, "Are you feeling me?" I don't use it quite as much anymore, but I used to say, "Are you feeling me?" I mean, I'm not asking you, "Are you hearing me?" I'm asking, "Are you feeling me?" And if somebody hears our stories and the testimonies of the other members who have given their testimonies that will be on this same fundraising site, if y'all feeling us, then support us by way of finances. You know what I'm saying? Help us to get to where we believe we can get, so that we don't have to fundraise and all of that. Help us to renovate our building. Help us to build phase 2, Ray of Light Apartments. Help us to replicate that so that we have a system in place where folk can come out and go through it, and we literally are able to walk with them, take them by the hand. James said something that is very interesting. He said, don't just tell people when they're hungry, "God bless you, I'll pray for you." Praying for you, my man. No. You literally got to get out there and do what Jesus did. He touched.
Absolutely. So I got your daughter and your wife's side of the story.
Yes.
But you have a wife and a daughter, African American women, who have invested into this property over here, and they are invested in transforming that into the transitional housing unit for the women. Can you talk about, from the husband, the father, the minister's perspective, how big that is to have 2 women
Of color
taking the lead and running a business to restore women?
I think women know women pretty much, like men know men pretty much. And my daughter and wife have been touched by my experience, obviously affected by it. And they've come to the conclusion that they feel they know what God has called them to do. I think it is tremendous for two women to go out there and to literally be a bridge, I call it, for other women. You know, and it's not a discriminatory thing. It's just now time to put the spotlight and the flashlight on where it needs to be put. And who better able to do it than women who can identify with being of color, women who have gone through, one as a daughter, young daughter, as a matter of fact, and one as a wife, you know, and knowing what God can do in order to restore people. They've seen the restoration. They've lived the restoration. They know what God is capable of transforming in people's lives. And I'm impressed with that. I'm thankful that they are willing to allow God to use them. And there's a business component of it. Don't get me wrong, but they seek first God's kingdom. They are women of faith. And, you know, it's just not a business. If it was a business, trust me, this area has been designated as a re-gentrification area. And the building that we have, we can literally sell it for I don't know how many times more than, but that's not the reason why we bought the building, why God gave it to us. And trust me, God is the one that gave it to us. That's a phenomenal story in and of itself.
It is.
That God gave it to us. There's so many people wanted that building.
Yeah.
You know, and this is even during COVID. God gave to us during COVID.
Can you tell a little bit of that story? How God gave you the building?
Well, we prayed about it, and the Lord spoke to me and told me, and I try to make preachers are long-winded. I try to make it short. The Lord told me not to write any letters to the owner, who is a white lady. And her family has been in this community over the years, for years. I believe that she is I can't remember the origin that she is, but she is the sole heir of the property next door. And she lives in Texas. All I knew is what her address was and who were paying the taxes on the building. And the Lord told me, go to Austin, Texas, and visit her. Don't try to call. Don't try to write her. Don't try to look up a number. Just get on the plane and go. And I did. And I went on a plane, bald-headed black guy in this neighborhood in Texas. I didn't see nobody out there that looked like us. And knocked on the door. And phenomenal story, but I'll just cut it short. She finally came home. I waited for her almost all day. And she finally came home from church one Sunday. And that's when I got a chance to meet her. She cracked her door open. And, you know, hello, may I help you? And I shared with her what the Lord, I said, I came out here because we have interest in buying your building. And I understand that you are the owner, and so on and so forth and so on. And she's still, you know, peeping through the door, you know. And so I gave her a piece of paper and I said, here is what we plan on doing with the building. Pretty much what I just shared with our audience here. And she says, okay, well, you know, thanks for coming, kind of thing. And I'll get back with you. And I left her my card and my number. Well, I didn't hear from her for about 3 months. So the Lord said, fly back out there again. So I flew back out there and knocked on her door again, standing out there, you know, and it almost like, oh, you again. And I gave her the same pitch. Well, this time she allowed me to come into her house. And that was when I knew the Lord was going to work a miracle. So help me tell this story. So we talking, and she's telling me that she had some issues with the building. Weren't back taxes, but issues with the building. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to sell it, kind of was sure, but even if she wanted to sell it, there was some issues. The issues happened to be that there was a lot of money that was owed in back code violations that accumulated over the years. 8 years, 7 years, 12 years, 15 years. You multiply that times $100 or $200 or $300 a day without even saying the number in our public. It was a lot of money. A lot of money. And we went to the city. I'm tempted to tell our people how much it was because that impacts the miracle. And I told her, I said, listen, I believe God, if he wants us to have this building, he'll do something with it. Long story short is that we finally came and God, because of COVID, otherwise we would have had to go through other channels and, you know, and get on dockets and make an appeal to the city. But God put us in touch with the city directors because of COVID, that personally to inquire about all these fines. And the long story short, the Lord ended up forgiving. I'm not sure what the percentage was. It was minuscule in the end, what they said we had to pay. And it brought it down thousands upon only on the condition that we do what it is that we said we were going to do. They were so impressed with our vision that they said, we're willing to waive it if in fact you do what you say you're going to do. So we ended up buying the building, you know, for a lot less than what, I'm talking about a lot less than what it's worth. And she was happy with it. We were happy. It was something that we could afford. And it wasn't about money. And I would say this about the previous owner of this building. She says, I don't want to sell it to an investor because all they're going to do is to take it and make money. She said, but you're a ministry and I'm willing to relinquish it and release it, you know, so that you can do what the Lord has called you to do. That's how we ended up with the building. Now the job is to renovate it. That's the job, to renovate it. And it's going to take us 380, anywhere between 380 to 450,000 to renovate the building. But the same God that gave it to us is the same God that can remodel it and renovate it. And we're trusting that our people will be moved by our fundraising and help us to make it happen.
Any closing parting words for the people?
If there is something I would say to everybody is when we come together and we share, we can do anything, anything, anything. I don't have to get 100,000 from any one person. I don't have to get 50,000 from anybody. I mean, there are people who can do that and we welcome it, make no mistake. But when you give $5 here and $10 there and $30 here and $50 there, it adds up. And that's why these GoFundMes, when people have tragedy in their lives, unfortunately, can raise $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 within a matter of days. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Because people have been touched.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the small amounts that make the difference. If our people do that, we can renovate this building and folk who give, they won't even miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a cup of what is it? Starbucks coffee.
Yeah.
It's a cup of Dunkin' Donuts every day, and a donut. I mean, those are the things, $5, $10, $12, you know, and we believe it's going to be done. We believe it can be done, and we're looking forward to people helping us to get it done.
Thank you for your time, Pastor. Thank you.
Blessings on you. Blessings on you. That's it. Good. That's good. You got stuff to work with.
Yes. Oh man.
So how long it was, but I'm sure he's gonna cut it down,
I'm gonna try and
break it up.
I'm a